is the most evil person you've come across in your daily life? I'm an ER nurse and I had a kid come in, mostly dead. He was septic from unhealed wounds. Foster family was abusing him in many ways, restricting food, making him run on the treadmill, beating him, locking him up. Foster dad brought him in and played all innocent. After we saved the kid's life and put him on a helicopter to the trauma center, I watched him fake cry with the chaplain. The foster mom ended up being a school counselor. They both ended up in jail for a long time. I'll never forget it. Bringing back memories. Also an ER nurse. Long time ago I worked at a children's hospital, pediatrics ER. First ones that come to mind: parent that kicked his toddler in the head with a steel-tip boot, parent who bashed his infant's skull into a door frame then ran to the neighbors saying the kid had a seizure. Neighbor was a nurse. It's hard for me to say who the most evil is, but boy, there are some fucked up people in this world doing despicable things to others. This kid who joined my high school, small town, our graduating year. Everyone thought he was just the coolest and gushed about him, totally hyped him up. The second I met him, I just had that feeling. Like my body viscerally went, nope, don't like that. Dude was just like darkness and evil. I tried to see what everyone else saw in him but just couldn't. My best friend ended up dating him and one day she encouraged us to go hang out together to get to know each other better. There was one moment where, in nature, it was like the shield broke and he seemed like a genuine, happy, normal person and he even remarked at how calm and lovely it was that day. However, the cloak of darkness returned shortly after. The list of messed up things he did to my friend is too long, but some highlights were: letting two guys grape her over his $25 drug debt and almost ending her life while she was 5 months pregnant, causing her to also abort the baby, and then almost ending her life a second time. Dude is in jail for murdering a woman as I type this. I doubt it was the first time, or will be the last time he does. Edit to add, I've met other people, gang members, that I know have murdered before but none of them gave me as strong of an immediate reaction as that kid did. I work in criminal litigation. One of the clients was the most malignant narcissist I've ever met. He had dead eyes. He would try to act emotional because he knew what cognitive empathy was but he didn't know what it felt like, so his acting looked ridiculous and obviously fake. It was interesting and horrifying at the same time. Everything was everyone else's fault. If you tried to have him face the evidence against him, he'd freak out. What crime was he charged with? Grape, witness tampering, stalking type charges. A former Marine and brony/furry who got involved with an underage girl then helped kill her family before running off with her. He's doing life without parole in a California prison. The Fullerton triple homicide case. I'm assuming. Yeah, I got his branch of service wrong but that was the guy. And he committed that crime not too long after I met him. I met him through a Facebook hosted brony group. The group dissolved shortly after he was arrested. When I was about 7, my mom was dating a really cool guy who was divorced and had 2 sons of his own. One was my age, the other was 3. The relationship lasted for almost a year, and there were marriage talks happening. I was even getting comfortable with the idea of having a new dad, mine was in the wind, and having 2 brothers. Then one night I was at my aunt's with my mom and we were all watching a TV movie. The commercials came on, we lowered the volume. Then the promo for the 10 o'clock news came up with a picture of his house, and the text double murder. My mom told me his ex-wife had been making his life hell since he met my mom, and decided to challenge him for full custody. In turn he murdered his kids and then himself. I still cannot fathom how such a kind, fun person would be capable of that. Now I'm a dad myself and understand that losing custody would be devastating, but the idea of even hurting my own kid to make someone else suffer is unconscionable. How'd your mom handle it? How did the next several days and months play out? That was a surreal moment. My mom ran into a bedroom and started screaming. Then she started making phone calls, more screaming, more crying. I was in complete shock, and remember feeling like I was sitting outside of me watching it all happen. Finally my aunt came back into the room and hugged me, which kind of brought me back to myself. My mom is a classic narcissist, so while I wouldn't classify her a pure evil, the next year or so was nothing but how horrible. All of this was for her and no one else. A man who raped his daughters until they began developing, recorded it on video, and taught them it was making love. Hundreds of hours of video. They had both repressed about a decade of their lives. He soundproofed their bedrooms in their apartment so the neighbors wouldn't hear. And after officers had to sit through some of the footage playing in court, he apologized to the officers, because he knew it was fucked up and made the videos just for himself. Edit. Some close seconds, read at your own risk. My ex-father-in-law abused the fuck out of his children. Made them eat until they puked, then made them eat their own puke. Beat up his son with a pipe until the son passed out. Put a wet towel over an anthill, then threw it at my ex, causing the towel to stick to her skin and cover her in ants. Then, of course, he became extremely religious and claimed all of his mistakes were forgiven. I was out one night in around 2011 or 2012 and got chatting to a guy. He wasn't bad looking and I was single and we were flirty. My friend's cousin happened to be out with us that night and she told me he was bad news and not to go near him, so I stopped chatting to him. Never saw him again, but about a year later he was arrested and charged with murder for stabbing his best friend to death during a drink and drug-fueled argument. I'm sure if I had talked to him I'd soon have realized he was bad news myself, but it still weirds me out a bit, especially because I live in a small town where murders are extremely rare. I used to work with this really nerdy guy. One night about a week or two after his wife gave birth, he killed the baby, their toddler, and then himself. His wife survived, but only because his attempt to set the house on fire failed. He hid all of the phones so she wouldn't be able to call 911. Did they ever find out why he did it? I think he just had a mental health crisis and broke with reality. It happens, sometimes with deadly consequences. Is this in Bloomington, Illinois? If so, my dad worked with him and he lived down the street from us. Had to wait for the bus the next day right by the crime scene. That's the one. I used to work at UPS in the DC area. This was when the DC sniper was out killing people. We had a coworker that all of us were convinced was the guy. He was just off, and I called him Shark Eyes. His eyes were just dead. There was a reward for the DC sniper. I think it may have been a $1 million, but I can't remember, but I do know at least one person called about him. Maybe more, who knows. Come to find out he was a full-fledged serial killer. I'll never know if the reports led to his arrest or not, but some people around work thought so. This guy. I have an aunt that used to beat her son till they were covered in blood. He used to stay with us pretty often growing up. A lot of my family are a bunch of narcissists and I haven't spoken to them in years. They aren't the most evil people but would consider them to be bad people, and I wouldn't be surprised if any of them did anything considered evil. My first boyfriend was also a bad person. Stole thousands of dollars from me, bought himself his dream car after I put my life on pause to help him with his business, and my parents would loan him money as well. He was extremely emotionally abusive. I felt mentally insane being with him. Could not decipher between my own judgment and his manipulation. Now I am very picky about who I date, lol. The pastor at the church I grew up in frequently called my preteen sister a whore, constantly cheated on his wife, embezzled money from the church, used his position of power to make bank on all the other businesses the church owned, refused to pay my dad, the only maintenance man for the church and its 15 other properties, a living wage, and forced us into foreclosure on our house. I stopped going to church when I was 10. This man single-handedly proved to me as a child that if God was as loving as they said, that he wouldn't allow someone so awful to speak for him. In a wonderful twist from the universe, he got butt cancer and died. May I ask what denomination this church was? I'm sorry for what you went through, even if it's not as bad as other comments. Lutheran. It's definitely much more tame than most of the other stories here, and I guess I'm lucky in that regard. I could have written him off as just another power-hungry asshole, but he made my dad's life hell and I was too young to really understand it. My neighbor started her own unlicensed dog rescue, and eventually had 82 dogs in a 1.5 bedroom house, and physically abused her kids. By the time her dogs and children were all taken away, the toilets didn't flush because she had tried flushing all the poop down them. To this day she still has dogs and thinks everyone's evil and she's a hero. Her kids voluntarily went into the system to feel safe from her. The story made national news. I'm sorry, 82 dogs in a 1.5 bedroom house? How the fuck do you even fucking walk around in that? I don't know. There were dog crates stacked on dog crates, some with multiple dogs in each crate, as high or higher than 7 dogs in the same crate. The backyard was also full of kennels and crates. It took more than 5 animal control trucks to take them all. Dated a guy when I was 16 or 17. He was 20. I stayed at his house when his parents went out of town. He made me breakfast the next morning, and while sitting eating at his kitchen table he told me he had a surprise for me and left the room. He came back with a black trash bag and clunked it in the middle of the table. It had frost on it. He told me to open it. I thought maybe it was venison or something since hunting was big in that area. It was a dead frozen cat. I promptly stood up and left the house as fast as I could. The entire time he was apologizing. I left everything I came with behind and went across the street to another friend's mom's house. An hour later all my extra clothes were left on the porch with the boobs and crotch cut out. Fast forward 10 years, he kidnapped a woman he was having an affair with, she was married, drugged her, smothered her and did some horrible things with her body. He claims he had a act with her and she couldn't finish and asked him to do it. He also claims she told him it would be okay for him to be with her one more time afterwards. He then took enough sleeping pills to make him woozy, obviously not enough to kill a man his size. I feel both very lucky to have left when I did and very sad for the other woman. What the fuck did he expect to happen with the frozen cat? All these years later and I'm still trying to figure that out. All I can come up with is that he and I had gotten to know each other pretty well, or so I thought at the time, and the cat was an introduction to a darker side of him. It also really messed with my head for many years as to what I could have done to make him think I would even be remotely okay with such a thing. I've just accepted the fact that some mentally ill people run at a different frequency that no one else can really figure out. Manager at a grocery store I worked back when I was a teenager. The homeless people in the area would go through our trash and take the bread and whatever they could that wasn't completely rotten. A few of the older employees would just lay the trash next to the dumpster so they wouldn't have to dive in. This manager did not like that. It's like it was her money or her food. She would dump it in the dumpster, throw bleach or ammonia on the food and then cover and lock it. Real piece of shit human, that one. Neighbor. A few weeks ago he called me to come over for drinks. I could hear that he had a few already and tried to say no, but he kept pushing. I went over for an hour. He was already drunk and half stoned. His wife was in town overnight and he was all alone. He kept ranting and raving about how Trump was being misunderstood, how he liked my house and the things in it, he had a key to look after my cat when I was away, how he just touched my guitars. In a moment, he paused and told me of a story about when he was younger he got stoned a lot and that one night he choked his wife. She freaked and got him to stop taking drugs when she was around. But he also said, he still dreams of killing her. I quickly got out, carefully as you never know of people in those moods. Changed the locks a few days later, notified the women's network here. Out in the country the women have a network to quickly disappear others when emergencies arise. No longer get him to cut my grass and my house will soon go up for sale. Also, this is Canada. I had a landlord/roommate that fits the bill. He was a real piece of shit. He had money, but he was fat and ugly, around 60. He would arrange for mail order brides from Asia to come live with him, fuck them for a few months, and then just send them home. He offered to share one with me when she was so drunk she won't know the difference. Yikes. He was terrible with computers. I worked tech support at the time, and he would call me at work demanding assistance. Once when I ignored his call, he went into my room with a large knife and took a picture of him holding it above my fish tank. With the note, tech support, or spear fishing, you decide. Also caught him creeping outside my bedroom door, at the bottom of stairs nowhere near any traffic area in the house, when I had my girlfriend over. Presumably trying to listen in. So many other things. I got out of there as fast as I could. Did you call the cops on him? No, I didn't. At the time I was just a poor boy working a shit job and needing a room for rent. It started off okay because he also traveled quite a lot, and so was gone maybe 3 weeks out of 4. On paper, it was a really good deal. My exposure to his bullshit was gradual. In retrospect, it was a bit like grooming, although I don't think he wanted to fuck me, exactly. I think he just wanted me to think he was cool and powerful. And maybe I did at first. He had a sick car and a nice place and his girlfriend was hot as fuck despite his age. I didn't know about his whole arrangement then. He was generous and didn't charge much. Didn't care if I ate his food, he encouraged me to actually, as most of it would just go bad anyway when he traveled. It was only after I started kind of taking a thanks but no thanks stance with him, like when it started getting weird, gross, that he really flipped. Became a totally different person. Like his job was to make me uncomfortable. Anyway, once I saw that side I didn't really want to tangle with him. I tried to play it cool as much as I could and just waited for him to leave town and then moved out while he was gone. Didn't leave a note or a forwarding address or anything, just ghosted. I feel like honestly if he had known where I was he might have tried to do something to me. I didn't want the police involved, I didn't want anyone else involved, I didn't want to ever see this dude again. He freaked me right the fuck out. My step-grandfather. He scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. Never heard a nice word out of his mouth, always insulting, bossing, bullying my grandma, and everyone in the room, including my dad. That's pretty run-of-the-mill asshole. Until I heard this story. When my dad was just a kid, he caught scarlet fever, which was difficult to treat back in those days. This led to a kidney issue, nephritis, which led to health complications all his life. So my dad was in the hospital for quite some time, I think a couple of months. My step-grandfather never visited. Back in those days they didn't have in-hospital school like they do now. My father was 12. When he finally left hospital, he was anxious and excited to go back to school. When he asked his step-grandfather about school, he said, "You are too stupid for school, you are not going back." That was it for my dad. He never got an education and was functionally illiterate. He suffered from low self-esteem. That is fucking evil. Several years ago, two guys went into a local video store and raped the female clerk who was working alone and beat her with a hammer, nearly to death. A few months later, a guy friend introduced me to this girl he was kinda seeing. She mentioned that her baby daddy was accused of being one of those guys, but, no, he wouldn't do that, he's being framed, blah blah blah. Found out not only did he do that, but she was the fucking lookout to make sure no one else came in. She was just so blasé about the whole event. She offed herself. A guy I knew years ago, who I almost went into business with. I'd never met a malignant narcissist before, but this guy fit the profile to a T. Of course, that meant he was super charming when he wanted. Funny, witty, seemingly thoughtful. People liked being around him. He was great. But then I noticed the cracks. Stories he told that didn't add up. Then outright lies. Like absurdly grandiose lies, and always the stories about himself, and how great he is, or how humble, or how empathetic, but always about how he's great at something. Luckily I cut contact with him before he managed to scam me out of any money, or get anything else of value. Others I knew weren't so lucky. I've kind of kept track of him over the years. He basically lives the same pattern over and over, and it's kind of sad. 1. Go to a new place. Ingratiate himself with new people. 2. Use those people to better himself at their expense. Cons, businesses, or big ideas he can use to get people to give him money. 3. Attract someone younger and dumber. Sometimes have a kid. 4. When the con falls through, leave and try again somewhere new. 5. When the wife can't put up with you, cut loose. If you have a kid, cut the kid loose too. Seriously, 3 abandoned kids last time I checked, 3 ex-wives. 6. Repeat until death I assume. What a wretched human being. I had a run-in with Joseph James D'Angelo, East Area Rapist, Original Night Stalker, Golden State Killer, at the Sunrise Mall Sears 6 months before he was arrested while I was working there. He was extremely creepy and unpleasant. I about shit a brick when he was caught and my mom sent me the mug shot. My mom grew up in the town where he started. She had a run-in with him too around the time he committed his first murder, where he tried to lure her into his car, got nasty when she wouldn't, and then stalked her in his car until she found a place to hide. Several other girls in her school also had run-ins around that same time, including 2 high-profile ones. Won't say for fear of doxing my mom, but people can look up his past if it interests them. Mom doesn't talk about it, but she did tell us as kids about what happened as our "do not talk to strangers" conversation, and when he was caught she opened up a bit more. I think it had a bigger impact on her than she cares to admit. I was at a low point in my life and ended up being involuntarily committed to a mental hospital, and I met someone there everyone called Wild Man. No one seemed to like him and that upset me, so I made an effort to talk with him. And even though I'm not Christian, I read him the book of Job and other parts of the Bible because he said he was illiterate and that he wanted to give his life to God. He could read and write, he just lied. After a while, he felt safe opening up and I wanted to be someone who he felt understood and cared for him. He told me very traumatic experiences he had, and it seemed to me he just needed someone who would listen to him, so I was happy to be there for him. He then started confessing things to me and I found out he is both a serial rapist and a murderer. Yes, I was involuntary committed for a few days years ago due to my alcoholism. I'm recovering now. There was an elderly man who was being monitored by correctional officers from a local prison. Apparently he was refusing his psych meds, so they committed him to try and get him on track. I felt so sorry for this man. He was elderly and just looked so disheveled and distraught. I took the time to talk with him and he seemed sweet. Even made me a bird out of paper. When he finally left, I found out that he was in prison for raping young children. I felt sick to my stomach that I had tried to engage with him. My brother-in-law. When I first started dating my now husband over 20 years ago, he asked me to drop his brother off at the mechanics to pick up his truck. I had spent time with him before, but in a group setting like family meals, never alone. That 15-minute car ride was one of the longest in my life. He never did or said anything inappropriate, but the only way to describe it was I felt like prey. His eyes went black and he looked like he was going to crawl out of his skin trying not to hurt me. When I got home I told my future husband, "There's something fucking wrong with your brother. Don't ever ask me to be alone with him again." More than 20 fucking years of hell later and I was right about everything. Care to give details on what he did during those 20 years? He let his third wife abuse, mostly emotional but some physical, his children from his second marriage and tolerated it because she made him a lot of money. She was a banker. They stalked and harassed his second wife who he left for his third. They constantly lied about the second wife, trying to paint her as a bad mother. They threatened to go for full custody even though when it was their weekend they constantly would say they weren't available, and then would leave them with their mother. That lasted until their lawyer told them to stop doing it because it looked bad in court. Children's Aid Society was called multiple times but nothing came of it because they were white and wealthy. This included an incident where one of the kids ended up with a broken femur due to their gross negligence. Harassed myself and my husband for helping his ex-wife. They spent years lying about me and did their best to ruin my reputation and relationships in our family and the community at large. He put an illegally registered handgun on our property to punish us for helping his ex-wife. We are Canadian, so this is a much bigger deal than it would be in the US. Tried to convince my husband to leave me, saying I was going to cheat on him and take all his money. He told my husband that his third wife, who as I said was a banker, would help him move all his money around to make it look like we made less so he could fuck me over in the divorce. He admitted that this is what they did to his second wife. He was a sexual predator. Groped countless women, including blood relation family members. He sexually harassed teachers at his kids' schools, neighbors, mothers of his kids' friends. He admitted he was a sex addict by the end. It would in no way surprise me to find out he raped someone. One of the people he groped was a cousin, like a blood cousin, not someone who married into the family. He had offered to drive her home from a wedding and went after her in the car when they were alone and out in the country by themselves. Interestingly enough, being stuck in a car with him was what set off my alarm bells. He was a serial cheater. But not just regular cheating, although he did that too. His first marriage ended because the entire time he was dating, engaged and married, he was fucking a married neighbor lady. Cheated on his second wife who he had kids with constantly. He pretended to go to work. He had secret cars and a secret apartment/condo. By the time his third marriage ended he had cheated on her too, countless times. In the last couple of years he apparently started holing up in a completely gross degenerate type motel for days at a time, so I'm thinking by the end there was drugs and sex workers too? The motel is known for meth and women who trade sex for drugs. He and my husband worked together the first 5 years of our marriage and his rages were terrifying. He was such a bad person that my husband testified against his brother and for his ex-wife in her unsuccessful attempt to get a restraining order. I say all this and you'd think, well, how did he get away with all of this for so long? Well, he was perceived as a pillar of the community. He was highly intelligent and very hardworking. Very normal looking. Big house, good at his job, etc. He was also extremely good at having two faces. You know how I said his rages were terrifying? There were people who had known him his entire adult life who had never seen him angry. He was so good at creating a false persona that the few people that did speak up weren't believed. He was also an eternal victim and a pathological liar. He was very good at making people feel sorry for him. How did he finally get exposed? Well, he finally left his third wife, who, to be fair, was an even worse person than he was. He had realized she was totally destroying what tiny relationship he had left with his kids. She absolutely loved fighting with people and had fought with all his friends and family. She also had turned on him and made his life a daily hell. She left his finances in a total mess and was threatening to drag out the divorce as they did with his second wife. He had always struggled with depression and had been. In the past. Myself, I believe he had BPD, borderline personality disorder. He spent 4 months after he left her and tried to repair his relationship with his kids with some success. Then he shot himself. All sorts of his secrets were exposed after he died, and there are people who he was close to who are having an almost existential crisis because they are realizing that the person they thought they knew was a monster.